Welcome to episode 14 of the Bulls REKAP Podcast. I'm Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. You can read me in the Sun-Times. You can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at @JCowleyHoops. And I figured it's been a little bit, so it's time to bring in the godfather of this thing and bring in Mr. Kap to talk about the trade deadline and the winners, losers, and all that kind of fun stuff. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I love listening to every interview you do. Honored to be with you. And you're my guy. You know, I love everything you do.
The feeling's mutual. Hey, so I can't put the Bulls in trade deadline top winners, but I also am not going to put them in losers. I mean, they moved a huge piece off of the books. And to me, even bigger than that, and people are going to roll their eyes, and basically you were negotiating your own sin. But the idea that they got that pick back, and I don't think people understand the freedom that gave them for not only this year, where you just don't have that shadow over your shoulder, but it frees you up for next year. Because remember, if San Antonio didn't take it this year and the Bulls land in the top 10, it's top 8 next year. And so it carries over, and it just doesn't. You always feel like, when you were little and you had to color in a coloring book that most of the pages were already colored in. It never felt like yours. It was like, this is a clean coloring book. And obviously, it's their own pick. It's their own sin from the DeMar DeRozan trade. But to me, that was the huge get in this. I don't think people are happy with the return of Zach LaVine, but it gave you financial freedom that you didn't have. What you have to go through when you're in a rebuild. And to me, nobody looking over the shoulder of that pick and how you want to handle it the next 2 years. To me, that was the ultimate freedom. So that's the one thing they got done. So what say you on that, first of all?
Okay, I don't disagree that to be able to move Zach's contract was a massive win, to get freedom, to get your pick back where you don't have to have goofs like me and you sitting there going, they freaking won again. What are you doing? Yeah. Now, you do want the better percentage chance to get Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Harper or any of these dudes. I get all that. But the fact that you traded DeRozan, LaVine, Caruso, and you did not get anything back other than your own sin is pretty freaking horrible. I mean, I worked in that league for 4 years, and I remember sitting there listening to Donnie Walsh and the late George Irvin and all these guys and talking about, hey, man, when you have something somebody wants, you got to hold fast and you got to get draft assets. They got nothing except their own pick back. But, again, it was big to move Zach's money. I agree there.
And that's going to be the big complaint. To me, the biggest problems I have with this whole thing is if you aren't going to get a pick back, you're hoping that it's with a team that just doesn't have those assets to give you. But the Caruso deal, I'm going to go back to the Caruso deal specifically. You're talking about an OKC team that has an abundance of draft assets. I don't even care if it's a second rounder, because second rounders are Bitcoin. They're the value to the person that deems them valuable. They are NBA Bitcoin. The colossal sin to me, and we've discussed this before, was you knew Andre Drummond. He was telling everybody he was going to Philadelphia free agency. And Philadelphia was offering you second-round picks at the deadline to make sure that he does come to them. And you walked away and you left that at the table last year at the deadline. That, to me, is unbelievable, because now all of a sudden, say if you just got a second-rounder for Caruso and you got the 2 for Drummond, you're sitting with 3 second-round picks that just make you, like I said, it just opens up your wallet on Bitcoin.
That's exactly right. I remember a penny stock I bought. It was called Coastal Caribbean. And everyone told me, oh, man, when they get those offshore drilling rights, that thing's going to be $1,000 a share. And I bought it at like 8 cents. Yeah, I lost my money. But guess what? It doesn't mean I won't go buy another penny stock or a crypto and go, maybe it hits. Like, if you're telling me that Sam Presti, who I think's awesome, and I still believe that if there had never been the pandemic, I believe Sam Presti might be running the Chicago Bulls. I think they were down the road with him. He had called a very close friend of mine who's an executive in another sport who will remain nameless because everyone knows who he is. And he said, hey, let me ask you a question. If I'm building my dream house in OKC, if I decide to leave that on the table and go to Chicago, which they want me, how would I like raising my family there? And they're like, oh, dude, you'd love it. He'd live in the northern suburbs, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit, they put pause, and then they went and got way cheaper. It was to get Arturas as opposed to $10 million a year for Sam Presti for probably, I don't know, I think he's on like a 10-year deal down there. Right. So I still think that would have been great. You're telling me he's all in now to try and win. I'll give you Alex Caruso. He is a guy that will help you win. I need a second-round pick. Yeah, you're telling me he walks away? No shot.
No, and I think AK was so focused on, I'm getting Josh Giddey. I'm getting Josh Giddey, that he just left things on the table. You're getting Josh Giddey because OKC doesn't want him anymore. They benched him in the Dallas series.
Yeah.
And so, that one's a head scratcher. But I have no problem with the Zach LaVine. Now, this I do know. The rest, I think the point that people are pissed about is, okay, but you got rid of all of Vooch's friends, but you still got Vooch. Why the Lonzo signing? And then obviously, why not make a decision on Kobe and Io now? So this is these are my takes on the first. Let's break it down and do each one in a vacuum.
I don't know your Lonzo take, but I actually have no problem with that one.
No problem with that. No problem.
You want to play for what you're making. You're a great dude. You feel that we were good to you, and you're going to be a great representative for us and help my kids in.
It's a 1-year deal because they finally did a team option for year 2. So It's a 1-year deal to kind of pass the torch, maybe help Josh Giddey, good guy, inspirational, all those things. I have no problem with that one. I'm fine with that one. I know people are like, oh, why didn't they try and trade him and stuff? And maybe they get a second rounder for him, but it's almost like if he wants to be here and he wants to take that salary, how can we say no?
Agreed.
So I have no problem with that. The Kobe and Io thing is the thing I probably have the biggest problem with. And I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. Because to me, they're both on unbelievably great contracts. I think if you could have sold that and maybe you would have had to throw in an asset. Maybe that's what they were keeping Jones and Herter and Collins and Street close for. Maybe they were trying to do that. Mm-hmm. I know there was a lot of chatter around Kobe, and it seems like that's the one that's going to go from the simple standpoint of when you watch him play. Io can play with either guard, whether Kobe's got the ball in his hand or Josh has the ball in his hand, because Io just that dude, he just like that. Kobe and Josh, and it's not off the court because they really do like each other off the court. On the court, you can see that Kobe is not happy with the ball taken out of his hands from last year. He was given that responsibility, had a career year, almost an all-star year. And now all of a sudden you're saying that's not good enough. I'm one of the best comeback players of the year, and that wasn't good enough. And so I think that is lingering, and I don't think that's going to go away. But from what I was told, both in the Vooch situation and in the Kobe front, they feel really strong about teams that were interested, and obviously have to stay interested, but needed a reset on their either losing salaries or making moves or seeing what happens in the draft. So I think they came out of the trade deadline feeling like they did their due diligence and laid groundwork down on multiple fronts. And I'm okay with that. But the NBA, you can't count on groundwork because that stuff could change in a second. And so that's my only concern is that.
Explain to me how Rob Pelinka can all the freaking time. Rob Pelinka can this is multiple years. It's like he's remade his roster. I'm not saying he's going to win a championship, but all of a sudden I'm like, hang on a second. You got Luka? How did you pull that one off?
Right.
I mean, that's why I nicknamed Arturas and Mark Eversley, who's the most invisible human being executive we've ever had in this town. I call them the settlers because they settle. Oh, Josh, we're good. I don't need anything else. You're telling me that these teams trying to win, Vooch couldn't help any of them? Come on. I don't buy that.
Yeah, and I do think they definitely felt like they had something in place with Golden State, and Golden State kind of said, hold on, let's see if the Durant thing happens. Let's see if the Jimmy thing happens. And for a while, for a couple hours there, and before the Jimmy thing was announced, Golden State, I know it was close. And I know that they felt like the Jimmy thing's probably not going to happen. I had a chance to talk to Jimmy. I mean, it's no secret that Jimmy and I are pretty close. And I was texting with him a couple of weeks ago when the second suspension happened from Miami, which that one was completely just complete bullshit, because all of a sudden Heat culture knew when Jimmy came there, he was going to fly separately at times. He was going to stay at Airbnbs and not the team hotel at times. No different than what Steph Curry does with Golden State. The big secret in the NBA that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Steph doesn't always stay with the team. Steph doesn't always take the team flight because sometimes he wants to bring his family. And there's a lot of times where if he's in the team hotel, he can't go anywhere. Jimmy, for other reasons, he likes bringing a lot of people with him on the road. He's got 3 kids now. And so that was always fine. And then all of a sudden, when he colored outside the lines and had something approved by Spo back in September, an appearance he had to make, and he was going to fly and meet the team. All of a sudden, now Riley's like, no, you can't do that now. And he's like, no, you guys approved this. This was – and so then – but at that point, they were in such a pissing contest. But Jimmy was absolutely thrilled to go to Golden State just because he knows what kind of fit he was and covers up so many of their weaknesses. And the funny thing was, the Bulls, I know for a fact, the Bulls were interested in getting involved. If it wasn't Golden State and there were other teams, they were interested in getting involved as a third or fourth team to make that deal, not to get Jimmy, but to get other pieces. And then that's how they thought they were going to move off the Zach contract. So, and then the Sacramento thing kind of came from nowhere. So, but yeah, Jimmy's the big winner out of this, because not only did he stare down Pat Riley, he got what he wanted, and he got a 2-year contract extension. Yes.
Unbelievable, man. And he's a hell of a player. And to hear the backstory makes me feel better, because I always liked Jimmy. I did when they were practicing at Weirdo. I used to get
Cap, here's the thing. Here's the thing that people don't understand, and you know the backstory. When the 2 most important people in your life, or the 2 most important people that are supposed to be in your life, your parents, your mom and dad, both of them betray you, and both of them push you aside at the age of 13, 14, 15, 16, those formative years, trust is all you care about. And when a team betrays trust, Jimmy goes nuclear on it. That's what people are like, oh, he's a diva, he's a this. Look where he came from. What do you expect from him? The one thing he asked for is trust. When you betray that trust, you're dead to him. And he's going to carry on, and he's as stubborn as they come. And the thing he's most excited about now, he's got, I think, 7 or 8 of the Fathead coffee stores opening up. And now he's going to have one in the Bay, because he's going to be out there for a couple of years, and business is booming. He's opening up one in Dubai, and he's going there for All-Star. So Jimmy's fine. Jimmy's the big winner in all of this.
Oh, 100% the big winner. The amazing thing, though, is the really good organizations, somehow, some way, they find a way to address their needs or get rid of their problems. And only here in Chicago is it a shit show.
Yeah, where it's like, meh, we got something done. Meh.
Yeah, it's a shit show, man.
So then Arturas comes out for the press conference. So I had already talked to someone behind the scenes that is very high up and I trust. And I was told, I was explained, this is why this happened. This is what they felt was going to happen, this and this and this. And Arturas was going to convey all of that. He conveyed none of it. It was his script was okay, I guess. But then he went off script and started talking about playoffs, where that was never supposed to be talked about.
Or play in.
Play in. And the problem, and he's so paranoid about the NBA because he got slapped on the wrist a couple of years ago with the Lonzo signing trade, which they were illegal and they were wrong in doing, and that's fine. The NBA want to make an example of him. But he's so paranoid about what he says, and that he botched that press conference on so many fronts. And it's funny because, I think enough people know. I went up to him afterwards because the one question I did ask him, I was trying to not bail him out, but I'm like, I started off the question by telling him, you sound confused. And I explained to him why I thought he sounded confused so that maybe he would offer some clarity. He didn't. And I went up to him afterwards, and I walk up to him, and he looks at me, and I go, what the hell was that? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, that was horrible. What do you mean? I go,
why I love you.
I go, you didn't explain anything you needed to explain. Well, what do you want? I'm like, and I said, I told him the problems I had with it, A, B, C, D. And, I understand his communication's fine. We're not going to talk about that. That's BS. He's not comfortable. I do know that. He's not comfortable in crowds, but at the same time, that's the gig. The gig is being comfortable in crowds and talking to people that don't take the job if you're uncomfortable in that. That's like me saying, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to start a coffee business, but I don't kind of like coffee that much.
Right. Exactly. I'm a newspaper guy, but I really don't like writing.
I don't read. I don't know how to read, but right. So, and so I talked to him afterwards. I told him, I said, no, he doesn't. He's got pissed at me one time. They did this media, again, probably a story that's out of bounds, but what do I care? They do this media kickoff thing at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And so it was the beginning of this year, and I've blown off a couple of them just because I don't want to have to go there and feel like I have to kiss the ring. You know what I mean? It's always going to be on their terms. And another time, my son was playing football, and he played in the A game, and then all of a sudden, the quarterback for the B game got hurt. So and I wanted to watch it. And this one guy, they videotaped. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not coming to that church thing. I want to watch my kid play quarterback." So it's Casey Johnson's fault because Casey he likes to provoke. So he knows it only takes me a couple drinks, and all of a sudden the volume goes from about 6 to 9.
Yeah. And
so he's like, let me get you another drink. Now he hasn't had a drink in like 10 years, whatever. He's Mr. Sober. So anyway, so I've got a couple drinks in it. And so Arturis is like, he's asking everybody kind of their opinion. And I told him, I go, Arturis, I covered the White Sox for 12 years. Okay. Kenny Williams hired a guy, David Wilder, who not only stole from the organization, got popped by the feds, had a secret bar, was flipping houses. There was even alleged, I don't even know how you want to put it, touching with young Dominican kids. There was all kind of allegations that the feds were looking at with him. And so I said, Kenny Williams hired that guy, vouched for him. That was his best friend. All the other problems Kenny Williams had, and he never got fired. And you're worried about doing a rebuild in the city? I said, all you got to do is explain to people what you're doing. Don't steal money from Jerry. Stay away from Dominican kids, and you'll be fine. And Arturis gets up like offended him and walks away. Got up from the table and walked away. I was like, what? And then the next day, he's like, you were a little too much, in the face. And I was like, I'm sorry, you asked me what I think, so I told you. So that was the only time I think he's really gotten
the honesty, man.
That he's gotten pissed at me. But so the press conference, he did not do himself any favors. Did you watch it?
I did.
Okay, and were you like, what the hell?
I'm sitting there going, hang on a second. Now, what did that dude just say? What? Like, you're exactly right that if I took that job, I would sit down and say, all right, I want to talk to our fan base. We need to go through some pain here. This has got to get fixed. It's not about beating Detroit tonight. It's not about this or that. We have got to lay out a championship plan for all of you. And here's the steps I want to take to do it. He does none of that.
No. No. And I think people, there was booing at the United Center yesterday. And I don't know why, because this is the new. This is
71-29. That's unacceptable.
That's unacceptable. But guess what? This is going to suck for a while. I mean, the problem is it should have sucked 2 years ago. This should have started 2 years ago.
Correct.
We should be in the stage right now where we're looking at whatever guys they would have truly drafted 2 years ago that were higher up. And then whether they have gotten modest now, whatever it is, we should be watching these young guys battling with Detroit's young guys and feeling good. Hey, one more draft or one more year, then we're a spot for a big name to come and say, look at the pieces you have.
Right. Giannis says, I want out of Milwaukee. I'm going there.
Look at the young guys I have. I got modest with an attitude. I got, whatever it is. I mean, say if God himself comes down and gives them Cooper Flag, front court of Modest and Cooper Flag to start right now. I mean, that place will be bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the shame in all this, that it feels like you're tearing the car apart now. We know we're going to have to walk and ride bikes, and we have no ride, and it's going to be painful. But Terrible. You could have done this a couple of years ago. And so I think that's the anger that I felt today. It wasn't about last night. That was embarrassing. It was zero effort. I don't know if Herter is even a guy that you can move forward with, but you got his contract for another year. There's still so many. That's the thing. There's still so many unanswered questions. And what's your biggest complaint with as this roster as it is?
You got 78 point guards. I mean, it's like, guys, can we get a little bit of balance on our roster? It's amazing.
What's your priority list of which ones you like? Because we were talking about this yesterday. The beat writers were talking about if you had to put them in order. And I'm saying Giddey, point guard, Kobe, point guard, Ayo, point guard, Trey Jones, point guard. After that, those are probably the only four. Alonzo Ball, point guard. What's your pecking order? I want to see if you're on the same page.
Pecking order at point guard?
At point guard or lead guard?
Wow. A really good question. I would probably tell you Giddey.
Okay.
I was not a Kobe guy even when they drafted him, because I was always taught, okay, what does he do what's his elite skill? He's a top 7 pick in an NBA draft. Is he a great shooter? He has his nights. He has his nights where he's okay. Right. He's not a great lead guard, good athlete. Like, I was never a big fan of that pick. Ayo, I think Ayo can be a rotation guy, solid player, never going to get overpaid. I mean, Giddey, Lonzo Ball, the other two to me are whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I had Trey Jones obviously last. He's expiring contract.
Yep.
Super nice person. I mean, salt of the earth. We've already seen that from him. Great kid, works hard, but just in that list, you'll shed that piece. And then I think you probably have to shed either Kobe or Ayo, whatever one has more interest in it. It sounds like it might be Kobe. Giddey, and we've talked about this. If they pay Giddey before he goes to market, I don't know how you come back from that. If you don't let the market set the price for him.
Agreed.
And you go ahead and do the Patrick Williams thing and you just go, oh, we're just going to pay him this and we think we got away scot-free. No, you don't know if you're scot-free until you saw what the market was going to give him, because you can always match. And so if they do that with Giddey, I mean, just put your resignation on the desk then at that point.
There's no way they can be that stupid. There's no way.
No. What would you pay him? We were talking about that too. Price tag on Giddey.
What does he want?
Okay, so at the beginning of the year, he slotted with his class. He wanted what Jalen Suggs wanted. There's no way he was going to get $30 million a year.
No shot.
Suggs was 5 years, $30 million a year. Okay, so the Bulls obviously said we'll table it and we'll talk at the end of the year. So what do you think his value is right now?
Wow, 18.
I will be shocked if he gets to market and anybody offers more than that 15 to 17 range. I'll be shocked because there's not Teams don't have money, and if the Bulls don't understand that, then they have no understanding of the landscape in the NBA. So there's not a lot of money going around at all.
Like, you gave Patrick Williams a bad contract. I know it's not enormous.
It's not awful, but it's not great.
It's still $90 million you gave to him.
Yes.
We talked about Lonzo. I cannot give him more than $17 million. If somebody wants to ride in and go, here's 25 a year, bye-bye.
Yeah. I would feel uncomfortable if he got more than 20 million.
I argued with KC when the Bulls were going to give Zach the max deal. And I said, KC, I mean, if you max this dude, it's not going to end well. And he said, and what are you going to do? Let him walk out the door?
Yes.
I said, I might. I understand the argument. Casey's line to me was, it's a fireable offense if you let Zach LaVine walk out the door for nothing. And I said, just understand, it's also fireable if you give him $215 million and then you're dying to get him off your roster.
So that was the big debate. Sam Smith and KC were on one side. Well, I never thought that they should have gotten to that contract year. I thought they should have traded Zach when he got back from the Olympics. I thought that's when his value was the highest, before he got to the max season. But again, you can't. That's the land of what if. I don't live in what ifs. And so my argument to all those guys, they're like, well, you got to pay him because that's what the NBA, that's what. But why? Look, that Bradley Beal, they had to pay him. How'd that go? I even told this to Arturis one time. I said, you guys can argue that, well, that's the price of business, blah, blah, blah. But I have history on my side. And there's been no one-dimensional two-guard that got a max contract and was the highest paid guy on his roster that ever took his team anywhere. That's the history of the league. I have that on my side.
Except Zach, for 23.
Who?
Michael.
One-dimensional player. He was a two-dimensional. Yeah.
Oh,
I told him one-dimensional. Yeah,
right.
One-dimensional player.
Correct.
Right. Oh, without question. I mean, Klay Thompson, two-guard, two-dimensional player. Jimmy Butler, you call him a small forward. But a one-dimensional two-guard, and you're going to put it in the face, it's never worked out. Never, ever, ever. And they were like, and it's funny because when Zach and I finally made peace at the beginning of this year, he knew exactly where I stood, that they shouldn't have maxed him. And at the end of the conversation, he paused. Because, at the end of the day, Zach's a great guy. I've always said about him. And he paused. He goes, just so you know, if they didn't pay me, someone was going to.
And he's probably right.
And I said, you're right. I'm not disputing that. It just wouldn't have been, if it was me, it just wouldn't have been me.
Yeah, it's funny how one decision can completely ruin an organization. The Bulls have the 4th pick in the first round. They bring a kid in, work him out, and then they do all their psychological stuff, and he tests off the freaking charts. He's from the Midwest. He tells them, I want to be
a Bull.
Here.
Yep.
It's Halliburton.
And
I'm talking to Arturis. I don't think I've spoken to Arturis since then. I'm sure he hates that I'm calling him the Settlers. And I said, Arturis, that kid is a star. Yes, but we're going for Grand Slam home run, Patrick Williams. I'm like, Grand Slam? What does he do well? He's a good athlete. He's 18 years old. I get it. What quality? Is he a great shooter? No. Is he, oh my God, as a rebounder? Absolutely not. And
not even a starter.
Right. And if you drafted Halliburton, you never signed Lonzo Ball. You never get fined by giving up your 2nd round pick. You never have him sit out for 2.5, almost 3 years. It's a totally different team.
Yep. And that was his first major decision, that draft. So overall landscape, I know you brought up the Doncic thing. Here was my take on the Don. I think it was a terrible trade for Dallas. I just don't think it's as awful as some people want to make it out to be. And here's why. If it's true, and what we're hearing from out of Dallas from other executives is they were given a pretty strong response from Luka that the Supermax was not a definite for him. He may have wanted to go shopping. Now, if that's the case, and there's any inkling that and it sounds like that was the case, Plus, you had a guy that was, for this injury, was not coming in and rehabbing at all. And that was known. So now, all of a sudden, you got a guy saying, I'm not sure about your Supermax, and I'm not going to rehab this injury like you want me to. Okay. The thing that they probably should have done is maybe call a couple of teams. Yes. But again, the problem is once you make more than one call, then an agent gets a hold of it, and then Shams leaks it, and then
it's all over.
Then it's all over. So I understand they identified, look, we want a championship guy who could win now. He is fragile, but he's been healthy for 2 seasons. He doesn't want to be a 5. He doesn't want to stay in LA if we could get him out of there. And so they go and they make that trade. I don't kill him as much as they're getting killed by their own fan base. I don't think it was a great trade. I mean, if they get a championship out of it in the next 2 years, then they win. If they don't, I still don't think Luka and the way the Lakers are constructed, that they're a championship level team, but he's box office. And really that's what LA wants. That's what they're selling. So what was your take? I don't think it was the greatest trade for Dallas, but I get it. I understand it.
Yeah. If I completely agree with your take that if he calls up Arturas and then he calls up somebody in Milwaukee and he calls someone in Minnesota, hey, you guys want to talk to me about Luka? He's available.
Yeah.
Shams, their Mavericks are shopping Luka Doncic with the purpose of trading him. Now all hell breaks loose. It's a complete shit show. People are outside the arena ready to basically go after the GM physically. He said, okay, I can win in the 2 years. If Anthony Davis is healthy, I know he's hurt right now, he has a chance to have a pretty damn good team. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with your take on it. And if somebody doesn't want my $350 million Supermax deal, okay, then I have to get out in front of it.
If you want to leave $100 million on the table, then you feel pretty good about you want to go somewhere else. That was my take of it. Biggest winner for me for the trade deadline, it wasn't like a sneaky deal. I thought it was pretty much in everybody's face. But the Cavs, they play the Celtics. DeAndre Hunter. They play the Celtics. The Celtics whoop their ass, expose their kind of soft wing defense play. Altman right away says, okay, we feel like this is a problem for us. We're going to trade our scorer, who's a great scorer. LeVert's a great scorer. We're going to trade our off-the-bench scorer, and we're going to get a guy that we think is going to help us in 7 games against Boston. And I don't know if he will. I mean, that Boston team to me is underrated, and I'm not going to call it generational, but it's a fantastic team. I mean,
it is.
And so the Cavs, when you're getting out GM'd by the small market Cavaliers, like the Bulls have for the last 5 years, don't you got to look in the mirror and go, our own division, this small market team is whooping our ass in that department.
Every day.
In that department. I thought that was the best trade of the deadline.
Yeah, and as you said, though, I think correctly, the Lakers are about showtime, star power, got to get a name back. Oh, that dude's 25 years old. He's available. Somehow, some real Rob Pelinka rides in and gets him. Pretty cool.
And now they get to sit back and say, all right, who wants to play with Luka? And we'll see who else we can get after LeBron rides off. Yeah. No, they set the table for the next decade. So
unbelievable, man.
Kap, thanks for doing this. I'll always like taking kind of state of the league after the trade deadline. So I had Billy Donovan on the pod a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was great.
It's funny because like a couple days later, he came up to me. He goes, I had a blast. I could do that all the time. And he goes, you know what, though? I was thinking nobody under 50 years old will care or say, who the hell are these guys talking about? I was like, you know what, Billy? I don't care. I loved it. I love talking about that part of the Big East and some of those guys, because I know when he was at Florida, he was probably recruiting some of those guys that I was covering out of Cleveland, the Melvin Levitts and Ruben Patterson and James Posey. I mean, that was as good as Cleveland basketball got, and he remembered all those names, and it was a blast. So if anyone wants to.
Funny thing is, he calls me. I had my basketball camps going on at this time, and I had some great NBA players who were in high school, went to the camp. So I had this one kid at the camp Billy Donovan calls. I don't know Billy Donovan at all, except I was at the Final Four when he played in 87 for Providence.
Right.
And it's 92. He calls. He says, yeah, my name's Billy Donovan from the University of Kentucky. And we are interested in a kid who is at your camp. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to spend some time with me on the phone and kind of help us, direct us where he's going to be at, and where can we see him, and who's in his life, all that. And it was Antoine Walker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
they probably weren't the only eyes on him.
No. And so Billy called a bunch of times, and he said, if we can ever return the favor, they got the kid. I said, yeah, tell Coach Pitino to call in on my radio show. And he said, done. When do you want him? I said, tomorrow. He's like, done. Yeah. You got him.
Yeah.
And so Billy and I have never been super tight, but we've always had a really good relationship. Yeah, I love that dude, man. I do.
Yeah. It's funny because back when you were doing that, people don't understand now because AAU has just watered all that down. But people back in the early 90s, mid 90s, I think it was AAU probably started taking over late 90s, early 2000s but they used to have all these cage classics across the United States.
Correct.
Solon Cage Classic. And, you'd go to these gyms, there'd be 20 people watching. There'd be 50 college guys there. Yeah. And you'd see, I remember the Team Michigan team had Kevin Garnett, Tractor Trailer, Terrence Roberson, Desmond Ferguson, Winfred Walton. I mean, these guys were at the time the best on the planet for their age.
Yeah.
And it was just, and all those days are all gone. The ABCD camp, all of them are gone now. It's all AAU.
It's funny. I just talked to Sonny Vaccaro the other day. His book just came out, and we were talking basketball. He'd be great as a guest on your pod. He was spectacular. But we were having this conversation. You mentioned all of those names, and man, AAU was nothing. You go to their high school gym. So the guy I'm working for with the Sonics, he leaves and goes to run scouting for the Hawks, offers me to go with him there. But I was friends with the late George Irvin from the Pacers. He said, why don't you come work for me? I'm a baseball guy. You're a Cubs. He's a Dodgers. So I said, all right, I'll go with you. I'm working for him. But my guy with Atlanta calls, hey, are you going to the DePaul, I think Georgetown game tonight? I said, yeah, I'm going. He said, all right, I'm flying in 3 hours. Let's go to my favorite restaurant, Carson's. I'm buying dinner. We'll get ribs, and then we'll go to the game. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I pick him up at 2:30 in the afternoon at O'Hare. And he said, I've been waiting to get to Carson's. I think it opens at 4. I said, we're not going. What do you mean? I'm taking you to see a game at 4:30. He said,
a high school game.
Yeah. He said, who the hell's playing a game at 4:30 on a Wednesday? I said, we're going to a high school game. He's like, F you. I'm not going to see high school guys. This is 95. He said, I'm not doing it. They can't play in our league. I said, trust me, please just go with me. We drive to Farragut. There's kids there. He's the only scout there. There's no coaches, nothing. Ronnie Fields, the late Michael Wright, and then this kid comes out of the locker room.
Garnett.
He watches him warm up. He goes, what the fuck? Who is that? I said, listen to me. That kid can go number 1 in the draft. That's how good he is. He's been to my home. He's a great kid. Listen to me. He's like, all right, I'll watch for 5 minutes. 5 minutes goes by. He has 3 dunks. Yeah. Ronnie Fields off the backboard. Here comes Garnett. He's like, all right, we can go eat. I'm out.
Yeah.
He won't be there when we pick. And they had number 1 pick. Anyway, Garnett becomes a Hall of Famer. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's great. Great story. All right, Cap, thanks for doing this. I think I'm not going to say the name, but I think we got another bull coming on in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, I can't wait.
So he owed me push-ups, so I bartered the push-ups out. So
you're the man.
You should not bet on the Bears. Don't bet on the Bears against me. You will owe me push-ups.
We're coming, baby. Here we come.
Thanks, Cap.
All right, have a great day.
All right, take care. Dave Kaplan. Always like catching up with him, talking basketball, talking Bulls, honest takes. All right, let's go to the island. We got a little rant here. We touched on it already. We're going to touch on it a little bit more. Arturas Karnisovas. I get that English isn't your first language. There's no problem with that. I get that you are uncomfortable talking at times in front of groups. I'm fine with that. When he talks to you one-on-one, he's not like that. He's great one-on-one. Can BS with the best of them. Dry sense of humor, but a sense of humor. I wish he would convey that when he speaks publicly a little bit more, and maybe that's a work in progress. But please, 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 please stop with this play-in, competitive integrity. We want our young kids to taste winning right now. Winning is still important to us. And I think he was even asked at one point, what do you deem as a higher priority, making the play-in and winning or development? And I think he said making the play-in and winning, because that's part of development. I'm not arguing that that's part of development, but that's not what this Bulls team needs right now. It doesn't need winning. It needs to get one more piece to jumpstart that development and keep that development going, and then probably another piece in 96 with that draft, or in 26 with that draft class. So please, please, please stop feeling like you have to appease the NBA and say the right things, or you have to appease this fan base by talking to them about playoffs. This fan base understands what's going on in the city. It is the city of rebuilds. It is the city of buying hope. It is the city of ownership across the board of every sport, telling the fan base, be patient, expecting that patience to be there, and getting that patience. This is not Philadelphia. This is not Boston. This is the one city where you don't have to pretend. Just say what you're doing, do it, and feel good about it. You will be backed by this fan base a lot more than the rolling of eyes that went on in his press conference the day after the NBA, or the day of the NBA trade deadline last week. So please just stop trying to appease people. Just be you. All right, let's go to the list. I don't know if I did a list on this earlier in the year, but this is right now, and the reason to do this is obviously because of what Modest has done. The 5 best rookies. They've either shown that at some point this year, or they're playing like that right now. This is kind of taking their whole body of work or their most recent work. If I had to put a list together and say, these are the 5 guys I would take, positionless, of course, these are the guys. So number 5, Jared McCabe, Philadelphia. Look, unbelievable season, was the best rookie until a major injury sidelines him. But moving forward, I mean, he showed that he's more than just TikTok dances. Don't love the TikTok dances, but he showed he's more than that. Number 4, Alex Sarr. Like the kid. I talked to Vooch about him. Vooch even said he's a lot more athletic than you would think, and he's a big body, not like thick, but he's got a big frame. He runs the court well. He's stronger than you think. This is all coming from Vooch, obviously. Number 3, Zach Ricochet from Atlanta, the French kid. Had some big games, explosive games, shoots the 3, gets a little lost sometimes on defense. But offensively, I think he is right up there in this rookie class as far as guys that can do some things and guys that to be excited about. I'll be excited to see, he made DeAndre Hunter a piece that they felt like they could move off of. So that says a lot right there. Number 2, we're going to stick right in our backyard. Modest Buchelis, I was told is the proper pronunciation. Modest, slow start to the season by no fault of his own. He was trying to figure things out. There's some tough love going on with minutes. The last 7-8 games, I think he's the 3rd highest scorer in that time. Leads all rookies in blocks in that time. Probably, I think, 5th or 6th in rebounds in that time. He's making mistakes on defense still, but he's figuring it out quickly. The 3-point shot has been way better than it was last year for G League Ignite and what it was earlier this year, figuring that out. He's figuring out the Euro step and that he can't just body guys and dump it in. He's actually adding a little Euro step to things and still getting that finger roll. And for his size, 6'10", 6'11", 6'10", we'll say, ball handling is really tight as they come for a guy that size. Exciting. I think if there's one thing Bulls fans can be excited about is Buchelis. Number one, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see this kid play. Loved him in college. Love him right now. As good as advertised. Steph Castle for the Spurs. Violent at the rim. Athletic. Inconsistent three-point shot, but it's there. Playmaker. Unselfish. Love the fact now that he's got De'Aaron Fox and still has Wemby. To me, he is the two guard of the future in the West. And plus winning where he comes from, winning is preached. Winning is the Bible. So he's my number one guy. But if I had to do the top five, that's it right now. And Buchelis number 2 right now for the Chicago Bulls. So maybe AK has hit on something. That'll give him 2 picks that we can feel good about. Ayo obviously was a great steal in the second round. And Modest looks like he's a keeper. So that's it for episode 14. As usual, thanks to Capman, the Godfather himself. Thanks, Mr. McGuffey. I hope you guys had a great time on your road trip. And just remember, I got next.